Yep.
All right, let's see it. What? Gummy bears?
Yep. It's a fan favorite.
All right, let's do this thing. I hope you're feeling pretty smart, Jamie.
Why?
Because for this episode, we're gonna have to behave like actual rocket scientists.
Excellent. What do you got?
Well, as you know, throughout the history of Mythbusters, our relationship to rocketry has been a little bit like a Clint Eastwood movie. There's been some good, there's been some bad, and a whole lot of the ugly. This episode, we hope to put it all together for an awesome fan favorite myth about non-standard rocket fuels.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that it's gummy bears.
It is, Sherlock. You're absolutely right.
Well, they do have a lot of calorific energy.
Right, and if it's true, just imagine we could fly to the moon on a rocket tail of pure, sugary goodness.
That I like.
I thought you would.
Ignition sequence start.
Rockets, a crowning, majestic technological achievement.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Their harnessed explosive energy is capable of taking us out of this world.
Eagle has landed.
This potential has led the Mythbusters to fire a fearsome variety of rocketry. And they've learned a thing or two.
Holy crap! Run!
Rockets are bombs with wings.
Total explosion upon ignition.
And a successful launch generally requires real rocket fuel.
Woo!
So to test this fan-requested tall tale of gummy bear-powered propulsion, let's get things rolling with our resident rocket scientist.
Since we will be building rockets all episode long, we thought it was important to start by defining our terms. This is not an unreasonable depiction of the kind of rocket we'll use. Fiberglass body, about 7 feet long, but it's the inside that really sets it apart. Now, the business end, where the exhaust comes out, is called the fuel grain, and the fuel grain of this rocket, like our Civil War one, is made of paraffin, but it's what sprays into the fuel grain that makes this a hybrid rocket, and that is this, a pressurized canister of liquid oxygen, or LOX. Now, when the LOX is sprayed down through the paraffin and ignited, it burns very fast and very hot, and when it sprays out that nozzle, it causes a reaction which sends this rocket into the sky. The only difference between this hybrid rocket and the one we'll be making is that ours will be powered by delicious, delicious candy. Oh, that one tastes powerful.
That's the hybrid hardware. But the Fable is fuel-focused. So it's out with the standard paraffin wax and in with the edible alternative. Question is, how do they make a fuel grain out of gummy bears?
So this is how this whole thing works. This is the rocket engine liner. Now we're gonna fill this with gummy bears, but we're not gonna fill it solid. We need to actually have a tube down the middle through which the liquid oxygen will flow. So to create that, I'm gonna insert this white plastic tube with a spacer disc so it's held in the middle. We put the gummy bears in there and we're good to go. Hello?
Oh, hey. Are we ready for this? You got the mold?
With the mold made, the guys start by simply jamming the gummies in manually. Although this won't be their only method of making the fuel grain.
Oh, I'm getting close.
Packing them in so tightly means there's more energy per cubic inch.
This episode is sponsored by the American Dental Association.
But removing any air pockets is important too.
In our experience, air spaces in a rocket fuel grain are bad because they're places where the burning can propagate and create too much surface area. Shove your candy in that hole. Everything about a rocket burning is about controlling the burn. And when you have too much surface area, that burn can get out of control, and really its failure mode is to blow up your rocket. And that's bad. And there we go. All right.
So feel how heavy that is.
That is, wow, that's like 12 pounds, 10 pounds?
Yeah.
Wow. Let's freeze it.
Freezing means that when the spacer is removed, the gummy bears will retain that crucial central cavity.
You don't want to know what's in here.
That's one engine, but they've got two more in mind.
Now, Jamie and I are gonna cook 2 different fuel grains, and here's where things start to get interesting in the Mythbusters rocket kitchen. See, a hybrid fuel grain works better the more consistent it is. Therefore, our second rocket is gonna be a contiguous single gummy rocket. We're gonna gently heat up the gummy bears. Ooh, can I lick the spoon? You really don't wanna lick the spoon. Not in this shop. You don't know what's been boiled in here. I do. You don't wanna know. As soon as that mass is melted, we're gonna pour it into the mold. Oh, nice. And voila, what we should get out is a fuel grain-sized single gummy. Nice control there, Hyneman. And Jamie comes from 7 generations of candy makers.
So, there's an engine.
A potential engine.
For the third fuel grain, we're sticking to the spirit of the myth, which is gummy bear rocket fuel. But we're going to cheat a little bit because of some basic chemistry. These guys are mostly gelatin, which is mostly water. The last time I checked, water doesn't burn very well. So we're going to boil as much water off as we can, pour the syrup into a mold, and let it set into a hard rock candy. Now we wait.
But gently boiling the mixture at 250 degrees overnight has not given the guys the result they require.
This could not be farther away from hard candy. But we called a candy expert. And the trick is to get the candy between 300 and 310 degrees Fahrenheit.
Adam begins by testing the new technique in small scale. And things are getting a little more serious.
Make no mistake, this candy is super dangerous. It's a superheated syrup. If it got on you, 3rd-degree burns, a trip to the hospital, and a permanent scar. 305, okay, excellent. If it got on Jamie, it wouldn't be any problem. It would just peel off the skin off of his exoskeleton and he'd repair it. Ah! I'm good, I'm totally good. Wow. Okay, I'm just gonna cool this down because I've got a compressed gas cylinder over there. Ah!
Take 2.
All right, welcome back to How to Ruin Kitchen Equipment. Now I'm about to heat up a bunch more candy using this big non-glass container. I have learned from my mistakes. Wow. So at this point, it's been bubbling at this exact temperature for about 25 minutes. It's reached this sort of stasis where the amount of water and the temperature of the candy are fighting each other in a convection current, and it's hit a totally stable temperature. But as soon as a certain amount of water boils out, it's going to collapse and the temperature is going to rocket upwards. This is so cool. Look at that beautiful caramel color. This is the best rocket science I've ever participated in.
Okay, tell me what to do.
Just hold on to that while I pour.
And given the potential dangers, the Hyneman steps in to help with the handling of the superheated syrup.
Oh, that's awesome. Jamie, I think this might be the worst mess I've ever made in your shop.
I don't know.
You'd have to think about it.
I'd have to think about that. You've made some pretty significant messes.
But with no further mishaps or mess, their work here is done.
There we go. Well, that was a lot more work than we anticipated, but we finally have our 3 rocket grains. We've got the hand-packed gummies, we got the contiguous single gummy, and we've got the hard crack candy. That's all we can do here in the shop. Now it's time to head out to the desert. Now, as anyone who makes gummy bear rockets will tell you, Actually, we might be the first. But as we'll tell you, once you've completed your gummy bear rocket, you're going to need a place to fire it. And in the Mojave Desert, at the edge of the Cohen Dry Lake bed, we are on the compound of the Friends of Amateur Rocketry.
This is it.
The middle of nowhere. What makes this place so special is not only their incredible expertise in rocketry, but it is on this exact location we fired the Chinese rocket share more than a decade ago. And they hand-built the rockets for our third and final attempt to fire a car across the desert, the JADO 3 episode.
Welcome to the Mythbusters Mojave HQ, the launch pad location for some spectacular rocket science research. Can gummy bears really fuel a liquid oxygen hybrid rocket?
3, 2,
Coming up, it gets real.
1! It's gotta go!
Majestic and magnificent. Rockets are defined as a vehicle propelled by thrust
Mach 1.
from burning onboard fuel,
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, jettison.
any fuel. And the most unlikely of all, the mythical gummy bear.
So we've got 3 different versions of our gummy bear rockets. First is the loose gummy bears that have been pressed into shape and frozen there. Then we've got the molten gummy bears, which have been poured in. And then lastly, we've got the gummy bears that have been boiled down to remove all the moisture. And those have been cast into what is basically hard candy. Those are going to go into these 4-inch rocket casings. Inside this is a tank of liquid oxygen, a valve, and the rocket engine with the gummy bears, and then the rocket nozzle. Those are all the major components that go into a hybrid rocket.
Now, if you remember, it's a hybrid rocket because we're feeding liquid oxygen through our fuel grain, and that's what this giant tank is full of. Liquid oxygen, literally some of the scariest stuff on Earth. To say this is flammable is really, it's not accurate, because this is what makes things flammable. It is the enabler for burning, which is exactly what it's doing in our rockets.
When you fire one of these rockets, ideally you can recover it later so you can reuse it. Now, how does that happen? Well, the rocket has an altimeter in it, and it records when it stops moving and starts to go in the opposite direction, when it's reached its apogee. At that point, it sets off a trigger which fires a charge that blows this nose cone out along with a parachute so that it can sail down nicely and be recovered intact.
This right here is the 20-foot launch rail that will guide our gummy bear rockets for the first 20 feet of their journey. They'll probably speed this part up. Oh my God. There we go. Our rocket goes here, and it goes in that direction. And this makes sure that it gets off on the right foot.
With the locks and rocket casing ready to roll, cue the first fuel. Hand-packed gummies.
Isn't that pretty?
That is gorgeous. So the gummy bear fuel grain is going into its housing. There are a lot of fiddly bits that all have to work perfectly in concert. Snap rings, O-rings, rocket grains, housing, and everything, and it all has to be properly assembled.
With the engine loaded and locked, it's go time for launch.
This is the pre-launch setup. We mount the rocket, insert the altimeter and the descent parachute into the nose cone, and then erect the guide rail.
This reminds me of something.
After that, we de-ass the area.
Here we go. Because just as our bomb squads are the only ones qualified to do the final capping in of explosives, our rocket techs here are the only ones qualified to work with the super unstable liquid oxygen. Once they have the locks in place, they put in the ignition system and the countdown sequence begins. It ends, of course, with me counting from 5, 2, 0, and I hit the launch button. The moment I do, an igniter starts a little fire in the base of the rocket. At the same time, a valve opens up and liquid oxygen begins to spray down the middle of the core of our fuel grain. It is ignited by that flame and hopefully also in turn ignites the fuel grain, causing a chain reaction of explosive force that sends the rocket skyward. System is armed, theoretically. All right, prediction time. Loose Gummy rocket motor? I don't think it's gonna work that awesomely. I think you also agree with me. But here's the thing on Mythbusters. It is easy to get too clever too quickly and to miss stuff along the way. So we always want to start with the dumbest possible thing just to see if there's anything that we can learn. We've got the Gummy rocket and the hard candy rocket to test after this. So I think it's fine if this one ends up going which is what I expect.
This is it. Will hand-packed gummy bears
3,
be a viable rocket fuel?
2, 1. There we go. It's a little smoke. Hey! Come on, baby! That's the right sound!
That's the sound of the engine not working.
That's the sound of failure. Well, we just fired our first gummy bear rocket. And remember, these were the gummy bears that were just jammed into a rocket grain shape with no other modification. And we got a successful firing, which is we heard it burn and shoot out some fire. And then we started to hear the telltale sound of gummy bears individually peeling off from the rocket grain and getting pooped out of the bottom of our rocket, but not with enough force to actually lift this rocket. We didn't get any else. We didn't get 1 inch.
Yeah.
It was a failure, but it was one that I actually predicted, and I'm not often right, so I'd like us all to enjoy this moment for just a second. Okay, that's enough. Let's move on.
The ignition flame appeared to light the locks.
Oh, nice. You're eating it?
Yeah, it's still sweet.
Wow.
But the loose-packed, flavorsome fuel simply fell apart.
Usually out on sites like this, the smells can be awful, gasoline, gunpowder, stuff like that. Out here, the gummies actually smell really nice. It's like someone just slightly burned the dessert, which is a euphemism for what we're doing here. We're burning the dessert.
Cue gummy bear fuel number 2.
This time we're using the melted gummy bears. Remember, it's one solid contiguous gummy material molded into a tube shape. I'm marginally more optimistic about this time. I got a rocket in my pocket and I'm ready for some action.
I'm getting more and more excited. The rocket grain is in there. I'm feeling very optimistic. And sneezing.
There you go.
Just want to point out, about 106 degrees Fahrenheit out here right now. I don't mind telling you, it's hot.
And the Hyneman has a unique method for beating the heat.
People often ask me why the beret. I'll show you. It's about 110 degrees right now, and I don't care.
With the rocket ready for launch, back at Mission Control, it's countdown number 2.
All right, here we go, folks. Arming the system.
Gummy bears are go.
Launching in 3, 2, 1. Ooh, ooh.
Go, go, go,
Come on, come on, come on.
Go, go.
What? That.
That didn't look good.
No. That was the opposite of something happening.
Yep, that was a misfire. Hybrid rockets really are a tricky, temperamental technology.
I'm not even sure we got a genuine ignition of the fuel on that.
Several volatile and precise components have to be in sync, and that's with an ideal fuel.
So we had a little bit of a misfire because our igniter, which is supposed to make an aggressive burst of flame to be able to light up the inside of the rocket engine, well, it was a little too aggressive and it blew itself right out of the engine instead of lighting it off. So we're gonna put another one in there, fill the rocket back up with liquid oxygen, and try it again.
Launching, 3, 2, 1, launch. I see smoke. Oh, that sounded good. Come on, come on.
Come on.
Get up the monument.
I hear it.
That sounds better than the last one.
Flame and no movement, though.
Gah!
No.
I'm set. From our bunker, we pushed the ignition button. And first, we saw the igniter smoke. And then, as they released the liquid oxygen into the chamber, we heard this telltale sound that really typifies a hybrid rocket, which is kind of a... And then there's this hum. This... That right there tells you you're hearing a hybrid rocket fire. Unfortunately, it did not have enough thrust to lift this rocket even an inch on its stand.
Yeah, well, science, baby. Now, gummy bears may work like rocket fuel when you put them in little kids, but for us, not so much. And that's why for the next round, we're going to be using gummy bears that we've boiled down to remove all of the water, leaving only the sugar. And we're hoping that we'll get a better result out of that.
Optimism is high. If gummy bears can possibly provide enough thrust,
This is one right here.
then this concentrated candy
Oh, that's nice.
is their best chance.
All right.
If anything's going to work, this is gonna, because we know sugar burns and there's a lot of energy in it, actually.
Yep, 1 pound of sugar contains 7,700 kilojoules, meaning this fuel grain with 12 pounds of concentrated candy has the potential to lift a 50-pound rocket several thousand feet into the air.
All right. My hopes are all pinned on a large tube of hard candy.
But will it burn?
Here we go.
And will it convert that energy to thrust?
Launching in 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Oh. Oh, hey! Come on, baby!
I saw light coming out of it, so
Yeah,
it's burning.
I see fire
Go,
signals
go,
on it.
go.
Come on! Go! Oh. A duck.
Houston, we have all the problems.
Well, I think that is pretty definitive. Gummy bears do not a viable rocket engine make. We have tried compacted regular gummy bears unmodified. We've tried melted gummy bears with a big gummy rocket grain. We've tried gummy bears cooked until they are hard rock candy. And although each one gave us a progressively better ignition with more of that hybrid sound, none of them caused this thing to lift even 1 inch on the rocket stand here. That's it.
Over the years, the Mythbusters have learned the hard way that failure is a valid result.
1, ignition.
And with a lack of thrust,
Go!
gummy bear rocket fuel is looking like a bust.
A duck.
But
Come on, you know us. We're not gonna give up just yet. We're gonna fire the hard candy rocket one more time. And we're gonna add a soupçon of, shall we say, encouragement to help it go a little more vigorously.
What I'm doing is I put a spray adhesive down the throat of this and then pour gunpowder on it, and it coats the inside of the rocket engine. So when we stick the igniter in there, the whole surface is ignited nicely. That should be good to go.
so with an even sprinkling of black powder in place to help initiate ignition, the guys are shooting for one last shot at gummy glory.
So we've tried all our different versions of gummy bears, and nothing has worked yet. This one right here has got to work. It's now or never.
All right, Mr. Hyneman, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Here we are, launching the hard candy rocket. 3, 2, 1, launch. Yep, come on, baby. Come on! It's gotta go!
It was the best case candied scenario, and there was no liftoff. But has the myth been busted, or the Mythbusters' methodology?
What is wrong?
The Hyneman smells a hardware rat.
At this point, I'm becoming suspicious as to whether it's the fuel's fault, or is it, say, the oxidizer or the general rocket system that is at fault here? So this next attempt, we're going to try and eliminate that as a concern, and we're going to use paraffin as the fuel, which we know is capable of making a rocket like this fly really far.
Yep, by replacing the gummy bears with standard rocket fuel, this control launch will test the hardware itself. Packed with paraffin, the rocket experts expect an altitude of 20,000 feet.
Anything less than that, and we're gonna have some problems to solve. Okay, here we go. Launching in 3, 2, 1. That's it, I see smoke. Oh!
That's clearly not the high altitude expected.
Here it comes. That doesn't look like it went higher than about 600 or 700 feet.
It should have got at least 30 times higher.
After the failure of all of our gummy bear rockets, we fired off this paraffin rocket as a test of our hardware and technology, and it flew 675 feet. That is unremarkable. That is a pretty clear marker that we need to review our hardware and our technology before proceeding.
Well, the rockets just aren't working.
No, and the gummy bear results have to be thrown out completely. It's the tricky, finicky business of these hybrid rockets that's getting in the way of us getting any actual results. I don't know what we're gonna do.
Well, let's head back to the shop and regroup.
All right, we'll have a total rethink about this.
Yeah.
With the hardware fail, all their results are redundant. All they've proved so far is they're facing one of the most challenging experiments in Mythbusters history. So it's back to the shop and square one.
So these are the parts we were trying to use in the desert. We've got your gummy bears here, we've got your oxidizer, pressurized tank here with the valves and the touchy ignition systems. Look, I think we just bit off more than we can chew. We are moving on.
Instead, we're going to use a solid rocket motor like this. It may not look like that much, but it's actually a very carefully prepared mixture of fuel, oxidizer, and a binder to hold it all together. Now, it's nice and simple because, in theory, all you do is light it and off it goes. We're going to make our own version of it using gummy bears as fuel along with the same oxidizer and binder.
Solid rockets. They've ejected Buster's Bond seat, powered JATO, and fired the Hwacha. They're simple and effective.
But producing fuel grains like this is not only time-consuming and difficult, but you need a special license, which neither Jamie nor I possess. So what we're going to do here is to turn these gummies into a powder. There we go. And then send them off to a specialist who will produce for us fuel grains that look like this.
The specialists require the fuel as a fine, dry powder.
3, 2, 1.
And to convert the gummies, Adam has hit upon a technique that doesn't involve large quantities of lethal lava-like syrup.
Seems like it's working spectacularly. Okay, I'm gonna use a coffee grinder to make them even more powdery. Dude, look at that. That is a super fine powder that used to be gummy bears. That's exactly what our Rocketeers want. Time to make a whole bunch more.
While Adam ramps up production on his gummy bear crystal method, Jamie is, well, being Jamie.
Look, I'm loving the technical challenge of making a gummy bear-powered rocket, and if it works, cool. But let's face it, ultimately, there's no real practical application for it. So I'm going to make a second fuel powder, one that could conceivably be useful. Oh, God. That's awful. I'm going to use poop. It's a pretty disgusting sequence up next, so you might want to put down your snacks.
Yep, Jamie's moving on from the myth and is thinking ahead. He's looking into the future of space travel. No, really.
Oh, man, that's nasty.
And like Adam, his first step is to turn his potential fuel into a dry powder.
First, I'm going to dry it out up here in the sun, which has the added benefit of keeping the stink out at the shop. It's already giving me nightmares. And then I'm going to grind it down into a fine, dry powder.
Some sun-dried poop coming right up.
I want them nice and dry and crispy. That's the way I like them.
Processing dog waste into powder is one thing, but the big question is why?
Look, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but crazy is kind of Jamie's MO.
I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but we'll soon find out.
Whenever he can design a system that has no waste whatsoever, where he's expended just enough energy to get the job done and no more, he is the happiest.
Well, it's definitely breaking it up.
And where does that philosophy reach its zenith? In space. Astronauts are already drinking their own urine, I mean, after filtering. With Jamie's plan, they'd also be using their feces as rocket fuel. What could be more efficient? So, while it sounds crazy, there might just be something to this.
It may have seemed like a gag to make you gag, but typically, by focusing on the details,
Tell you one thing, this rocket better work.
Jamie's actually thinking big. So with the gummies and poop powderized,
Yep, that's pretty well ground up.
it's packaged and sent off. After the dangerous process of combining it into a solid motor is complete, it'll be back to the desert for a date with detonation.
Welcome back to the Mojave Desert. Last time we were here, we were testing rockets made of gummy bears, and the results were spectacularly unspectacular.
Round two.
We had rockets that did this,
Oh, no.
and rockets that did this. A duck. Yeah, so we've changed our methodology entirely. We've gone from hybrid rockets to solid rocket motors, and we've come back out to this site with a gummy bear rocket to test. We've also come out with something I might call Hynemanian.
Horror within horror.
Mr. Hyneman has gotten a bee in his bonnet about making a rocket using poop, and we are also going to test that.
Last time we saw the sweet and sour fuel, they were powderized and sent off to the rocket scientists.
And here is what they did with them. They turned them into two official rocket motors, one made out of gummy bears, one made out of poop. Barely worse than the gummy bears.
Yep, they've been converted into solid rocket propellant.
It looks like this. Basically, it's composed of an oxidizer and the fuel, which is held in place by a binder made up of a variety of rubber resins. Now, when that starts to burn, all those expanding gases are forced out through the rocket nozzle. That accelerates those gases, creating a lot of thrust, and up the rocket goes.
In stark contrast to the hybrid system, it couldn't be simpler. An electronic match is lit, and in theory, the gummy and poop-based fuels begin an explosive chain reaction. Question is, how will the mythical fuel's performance be measured?
It's almost time for launch. Now, our first launch is surprisingly not going to be either a gummy bear rocket or a poop rocket. It is, in fact, going to be a control launch of a best-case scenario rocket, otherwise known as a rocket. Big rocket coming through. It has the ideal mixture of fuel, binder, and oxidizer.
Okay, in goes the engine with standard rocket propellant.
And it will give us the best case scenario of how high a rocket can go of this size and weight.
All right, well, that's it. Let's put it on the rail.
All right. Now, I know we've already spent a bunch of time explaining the difference between this rocket and its predecessors, but you might not notice. We've got 3 cameras attached to this rocket so that we can see the rocket's eye view of its own launch. That's pretty cool. Oh, yeah, I remember. This part sucks. There we go. She's up.
The propellant in this rocket is a standard formulation that has been optimized for its performance. Now, we're going to use it as a control or a benchmark because when we send it up, we're going to record the maximum altitude it reaches. Then when we send up our gummy bear and our poo rockets, we'll also record how high they went, and that'll give us a solid point of comparison.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Mythbusters solid rocket motor control in 3, 2, 1. Yeah! I knew we'd see a rocket fire eventually. That was cool.
Yeah.
A little pop, that was the pop of the parachute deploying.
Unlike the hybrid system, the ignition and launch was successful. And a rocket's eye view of the Mojave Desert, spectacular. However,
Oh, and it's drifting. It's drifting a lot.
proving once again that rocket science is, well, rocket science, wind conditions were less than ideal.
All right, let's go get our rocket.
During ascent, the rocket was pushed significantly sideways.
We might be wandering here for a little while.
But after a successful search and rescue, they head back to base, where they discover it reached 4,133 feet. But more detailed data reveals a potential problem.
So we had a good launch, but the telemetry and GPS is telling us that we had a lot of lateral drift that may have compromised our data. Because if that curve was straightened out, it might have actually given us a higher altitude. So we've got another one of these rockets. Control test number 2. And we're gonna go again just to be sure.
Yep, to ensure all the launches have equal conditions, they wait until the wind dies down.
All right, let's do this. You ready?
Yeah.
This is control number 2. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Launch.
Wow.
Oh, beauty.
That one went straight up.
Straight up, and almost straight down.
Dude, I think that one's gonna land like right here. It was coming right down, right on top of us.
Nice. Walking distance from the bunker.
And telemetry says the distance this went to was 4,491 feet.
Well, that gives us our baseline. Time to fire up the Gummy Bear rocket.
Let's do it.
Unaffected by wind, control number 2 went almost 400 feet higher, and the benchmark for gummy bears has been established.
I know that we say that failure is always an option, and truly it is. But in this episode, I feel like we've had our fair share. So I am feeling great relief at actually getting something off the ground and something with which we can compare our results with. Whew.
The rocket propellant we've been using is 77% ammonium perchlorate oxidizer and 23% fuel mixed with a rubber binder. Now we're replacing that fuel component with gummy bear powder. In goes the gummy bear motor. What we're looking to find out is how the gummy bear fuel component compares to the conventional fuel component. Good to go.
It's been one of the most technically challenging experiments in Mythbusters history. But this is it. The gummy bears are good to go.
You know, Jamie, not many people know this, but gummy bears are actually the poop of baby unicorns.
Really?
Yeah. No one's ever gotten close enough to figure out how their sphincter makes that bear shape, but little known fact.
It's time for a prediction about gummy bears. Drum roll, please. Thank you. My prediction is that the gummy bears will actually perform as a rocket fuel. I don't think it's much of a stretch to believe that. They're sugar, that's a hydrocarbon that has energy, and from everything I understand about rocketry, which is a fair bit after all these years, I think they're gonna take off. I don't think they're gonna be as efficient as regular rocket fuel. I don't think they're gonna exceed it, but I think they're gonna perform pretty well.
The key point of comparison for the energy and efficiency of the propellant will be the maximum altitude attained.
All right, so this is it. You ready?
Are you ready?
I'm totally ready. Let's gummy the sky open.
Conventional propellant launched this 8-foot rocket with 50-pound payload to 4,491 feet. How will the gummies go?
Gummy bear rocket in 3,
2, 1.
There it goes. We have ignition.
Oh! Went way up there.
It did. Gummy bears worked.
Yep, they did.
Give me some right there. Boom.
It's been a long and frustrating journey, but that one successful launch has made it all worthwhile.
Beeping is good.
Go for main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and the final liftoff of Discovery.
Rocket science is knife-edge sensitive technology, harnessing an explosive chain reaction for propulsion has its pitfalls. And not enough energy or poor design
A duck.
means you don't get off the launch pad.
1.
But how did the gummy bears and their sinister black vapor trail perform?
Boom.
After finding the landing site,
Beeping is good. That is beautiful.
it's the mythical moment of truth. It flew, it's true. But how did it perform compared to real rocket fuel?
So when you decode the altimeter, it says that our gummy bear rocket got up to 3,691 feet. That's pretty respectable.
Only respectable?
So gummies flew, man. They ignited, they shot into the sky, flew almost 3,700 feet into the air. That was awesome. What does it mean? Is it time to break out the champagne and call NASA about our new rocket fuel? Let's slow down just a little bit and take a look. Here's the thing. The whole point of real rocketry is to maximize thrust and efficiency to get the largest possible payload as far from Earth as possible. So the discovery of a rocket fuel that is less efficient than the fuel we currently use, it's not really cause for celebration. It's more a reason to celebrate rocketry's flexibility, let's say. I'm going to say this one is plausible.
Yep, the sweet mythical snacks, carefully combined with a potent oxidizer and binder, had enough energy for liftoff. But in such a high-performance technology, 82% is merely viable and barely successful. Cue the Hyneman.
Well, it was fun, and it actually worked. But let's face it, there's not really any practical reason to use it. There is, however, another fuel that, on the face of it, might seem just as frivolous. But in reality, it might just have a practical use in future space travel.
All right, you might be forgiven for thinking Jamie has lost his marbles, but allow me to explain. What makes a rocket fly, what makes a good rocket fuel is a hydrocarbon because it burns well in the presence of oxygen, and poop is a hydrocarbon. Back in the shop, Jamie did some calorific testing of poop versus rocket fuel.
2,916 calories per gram.
Even though it was several orders less efficient than rocket fuel, it's a lot easier to find than gummy bears. Up on the rocket, it's being made all the time. And on a rocket where every gram counts in terms of the energy expenditure, he might just be onto something.
So after all that nasty, smelly, disgusting, doggy doo-doo, we end up with this sleek carbon fiber beauty right here.
So there we go. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first poo rocket coming out of Mythbusters.
It's time to pronounce my poop rocket prediction. And I want to get this right because I don't want to poop the bed. I mean, rocketry is something that we do. So I'm here to say that I think that while the poop may launch, I don't think that our number 2 solution here will become our number 1 solution.
Mind if I set this one off?
Not at all. Be my guest.
The standard rocket fuel control nearly hit 4,500 feet. How will Jamie's no-waste, waste fuel compare?
All right, this is it. Poop rocket, the final launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, there it goes. Whoa! That's beautiful! Dude! It's got a very appropriately dark smoke trail, doesn't it? Jamie! That was really respectable!
Yeah.
That was fantastic! Oh! Well done, little poop rocket.
Okay, so the telemetry is telling me that we got 2,900 feet. That's pretty respectable.
Respectable? It's downright phenomenal. I mean, I know it didn't go as high as the gummy bears, but that was never the point. The fact is that it did launch. Here's the thing you need to know about why poo is amazing. It's always going to be there, and it's totally useless.
If you're on a long space voyage, every gram counts as far as your payload, so you're going to want to recycle as much as possible. With something like urine, it's not so hard. You can filter it and treat it and then drink it again. But with poop, it's not like you're going to be able to process it and then reconsume it. We have, however, shown that it might just be a viable rocket fuel. Who knew?
You heard it here first, NASA. Or maybe you already thought of it. Probably did. Bunch of smart guys. Now, we got to call this before we go. Gummy bears and poop as rocket fuel, how do we find?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. They're both plausible.
I think they are. Let's get out of here.